I saw a piece of writing advice today that I just wanted to address. And the writing advice was, you should write to write. Welcome to How to Write Good. I am your host, Daniel Poppie. You can find out more about me at danielpoppie.com. If it is your first time here, How to Write Good is a writing podcast that seeks to find principles and advice that can be applied across a broad range of writing situations. If you've been here before, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button below, and share. You should write to write, or writing to write is a good thing. So this is the piece of advice I saw. And at first I said to myself, well, that doesn't really make sense, because the goal of writing isn't just to write. The goal of writing isn't just beautiful writing. The goal of talking isn't just to talk, even though there are some people that seem to think it is the case. The goal of writing is to communicate. The goal of writing is to take ideas and experiences that you have and convey them to a person who is not yourself in a way that that person understands those things as you understand them. And that's what I think about writing, and I think that is the main goal of writing. And that's what I thought when I saw this piece of advice that said, you should write to write. And what I understand that to mean is you should take time to write for the sake of the writing itself. Now, being a contrarian about everything and having this idea that the goal of writing is to communicate, I think to myself, that doesn't make sense. The goal of writing is to communicate. But when I actually thought about it, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it lines up exactly with other advice I've given in the past. So I am going to give you advice. You should write to write. But I don't think that should be the end product. There is a specific reason that you should write to write. Now, before I go into what that reason is, I'd just like to discuss what I think writing to write looks like. This is what I think writing to write is. I think it is sitting down. I think it is starting to put different words together, seeing how those words fit together, trying out new words in a different order, seeing which ones work best. Can I change the order? Getting rid of all the words, starting with a new word completely, and it can look even different than that. Writing to write could be writing one single word, and then writing to write could be giving a definition of that single word, and then writing to write could be having another word that means something similar, and then trying to explain what that word is, and then putting those words together. Writing to write is rhyming words together. It is seeing which consonant sounds sound better together. It is determining if there is a rhythm that sounds better than another rhythm. And it is not trying to convey a specific thing. It is just taking the pieces of writing and it is putting those pieces in whatever order it sees fit. Snap. I love cake. You don't really like cake, do you? Yeah, but I think it's the case that you should go away right now. It sounds like gibberish in some ways, but it is actually something I think is very fundamental to learning how to write better. And it is not something you have to sit down and do all the time, but I think it's a principle you should have in the back of your mind. And it is a very playful principle, and it is a principle that can take you from being in a bad mood about writing and put you in a very good mood. So writing to write is not trying to convey something. Writing to write is looking at the language itself and playing with the language. It is getting back to your roots of why you love to write, because in a lot of cases, people love to write because they love the language. They love how it sounds. They love how things are put together. They love to see what they can convey with the least amount of words. And it's not necessarily good writing when they do that specific thing, but it gets them into this mindset of playing with the language. It gets them into the mindset of trying different things out. So I think this is actually a very important facet. I think this is actually a very important piece of writing advice as you learn how to write. And there's so many different ways you can apply this. You could try to write sentences with the same number of words. You could try to write sentences with the same number of syllables, and you could make it into a game. You could say, I'm going to do sentences with 7 syllables, then 3 syllables, then 4 syllables, then 6 syllables, and I'm going to have a pattern, and I'm going to try to write the sentences in that way, and I'm going to try to see if I can make the sentences sound good. Games have rules, and when you are trying to write for writing's sake, you are applying specific rules to your writing that are arbitrary. You're just having fun with what you're doing. The reason why I think this is so important is because it teaches you how the different pieces of the writing fit together. It teaches you how the language works together, and though you might come out with a lot of monstrosities when you're trying to do this thing, I think that you are going to learn that certain things sound better together than other things. You're going to see that certain constructions sound beautiful and other constructions don't. You're going to discover certain ways to say specific things. You might discover new words. You might discover new grammatical rules. You might discover that you actually disagree with certain grammatical rules. But in the end, it's going to start you thinking about writing in a different way than if you decided you were just going to write to be understood. Now, I do believe the end goal of writing is to be understood, because writing follows language. That is one of my writing rules. Writing follows language, and therefore if writing follows language, and language is used for one person to communicate to another person, I believe that writing would also be the same thing. It is used to convey one idea from one person to another person. And if I know how the writing works, if I know how the language works in depth, because I've played with the language again and again and again, I can take all the things I learned when I was messing around with the language and I can implement them in that communication to another person. And I think that's pretty awesome. So what do you think? Do you think that you should write just to write, or do you think that you should write to communicate, or do you think that there's another reason that you should write? You should definitely reach out and tell me if you have any ideas. If you enjoyed this, you're probably wondering how you can support me. Well, you can actually do 2 simple things. Follow the first link below to grab a copy of my book, and then follow the second link and sign up for my newsletter. It's that simple. Those 2 things will mean the world to me and give me more time to write books and create content for you. As always, my name is Daniel Poppie, and this is How to Write Good.